Maybe you are sitting with the quiet, persistent ache of believing that your life is a tapestry left unfinished, a series of loose threads and tangled colors that you are desperately trying to weave into a coherent pattern before the light fades. Perhaps your hands feel cramped from holding the shuttle too tight, and your eyes are tired from staring at the knots you have made instead of the beauty of the design. You have been pulling at these threads for so long, trying to force the fabric of your days to match some idealized image in your mind. But every time you fix one section, another becomes frayed. You are not broken, and you are not falling behind. Your life is not a mistake that needs correcting, and you do not have to finish the pattern tonight. The tension you feel in your shoulders, that bracing, restless pulse that keeps you awake, is simply the sound of your own heart trying to do the work of a lifetime in a single hour. Right now, lean into the support of your bed and let the heavy weight of the world shift away from your bones. You do not need to pull the covers up to hide from your thoughts, and you do not need to solve the knots of your history. Imagine the room around you is a vast, quiet loom room, cool with the scent of raw, unspun silk and the faint, earthy aroma of rain on stone. Outside, the world is moving through its own natural cycle, and here, within the circle of your own breathing, there is nothing for you to accomplish. You are allowed to let the loom stand still. You are allowed to let the threads go slack. This stillness is not an absence of progress. It is the space where the cloth of your life finally learns to breathe. What if the unfinished nature of your life is not a tragedy, but the very condition of your freedom? We often believe that we will finally find peace once we have smoothed out all the edges, finished every task, and woven every stray thought into a perfect, symmetrical design. But this, the paradox that keeps us awake. The more we try to finalize our existence, to pin it down like a moth on a board, the more we suffocate the very life we are trying to preserve. True peace does not come from finishing the tapestry, because the thread of time is infinite. It comes from learning to weave without the desperate need to see the final result. You have been carrying a heavy burden, the belief that you must be completed by the time the day ends. But look at how the tide meets the shore, never needing to finish its work, or how the mountain accepts the passing of the seasons without trying to hold on to one specific color of autumn leaf. Your suffering is not found in the gaps of it is found in the frantic, exhausting motion of your hands as you try to fill them. You are safe enough to soften now. You do not need to be any different than you are in this exact moment, with all your loose ends and all your vibrant, messy colors. Sometimes, when we are caught in the loop of overthinking, we imagine that our thoughts are the loom itself, and that if we just turn the crank one more time, we will finally create clarity. But tonight, we will learn how to set the shuttle down. We will explore how to stop confusing the act of thinking with the act of living. You are currently standing before a gate that you have built yourself, a gate made of shoulds and musts and what-ifs. You think that if you can just find the right key, you will finally walk through into the garden of rest. But what if you were never meant to open the gate? What if the peace you have been seeking has been standing right behind you, waiting for you to turn around and stop gripping the handle? You have tried to be strong for so long that even the idea of letting go feels like a risk, as if the whole structure of your identity might unravel if you stop holding it together. But what you are holding is not your identity. It is simply a collection of past efforts, a knot of worries about a future that has not yet been woven. You do not need to discard these threads. You only need to stop pulling on them so hard that they cut into your palms. This evening, let us move slowly. We are going to look at what it means to be a weaver in a world that demands finished products. We will see how two different people found their way to the same silence, not by achieving perfection, but by letting go of the need for it. There is no urgency here. You do not have to follow the rhythm of my voice if it feels too fast. Your own breath is the only rhythm that matters. It is the steady rise and fall of your chest, the quiet in and out, that has been sustaining you since your first moment, long before you ever started worrying about what you had achieved. Take a moment to notice where you are holding tension. Perhaps it is in the space between your eyebrows, or the way your jaw is clenched against the night. Just notice it. You do not need to fix it. You do not need to force your body to relax. Simply acknowledge that you have been working very hard, and that it is perfectly okay to set that work aside for a while. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Let the weight of your arms sink into the softness of the mattress. You are here, you are breathing, and you are entirely held by the quiet of this space. You have done enough. You have been enough, even when you felt like you were failing. The tapestry of your life will continue to unfold tomorrow, whether you worry over it tonight or not. The colors will shift, the pattern will change, and the thread will keep moving through the shuttle, regardless of your anxiety. What a relief it is to know that you are not the one who has to pull the thread through eternity. You are only the one who gets to watch it move, to witness the colors as they arrive, and to notice the texture of the day as it brushes against your skin. In a few moments, I will tell you the story of a young weaver who believed that the beauty of the sunset could only be captured if she could freeze it in place. She spent years trying to stitch the light to the cloth, and years more feeling the bitterness of her failure, but her journey toward peace did not begin when she finally finished the perfect sunset. It began when she saw, for the first time, that the light was never meant to be owned. And perhaps, as you listen to her journey, you will find that something in your own chest begins to ease, some tightness that has been there for so long you had forgotten it was there at all. For now, just stay here. Let the silence of the room wrap around you like a quiet, comforting weight. If your mind wanders to tomorrow, if it starts to replay the knots of your day, just notice those thoughts, as if they are stray threads caught on your sleeve. You do not need to pull them. You do not need to untangle them. You can just let them exist, loose and drifting, while you focus on the simple, uncomplicated sensation of the air filling your lungs. There is nothing else you need to do. There is nowhere else you need to be. You are already home, and the loom is resting. This is the doorway to your own inner temple. It has been waiting for you to stop your pacing, to stop your measuring, to stop your judging, so that you could finally sit down in the center of your own life. Are you ready to let the shuttle rest? Are you ready to see what happens when the weaver stops fighting the cloth? If it feels right, take one more deep, slow breath and let the exhale be long, releasing the last of the day's intensity into the cool, dark air. The story is waiting for us, and the night is wide and kind. You are ready to begin. In a high valley, where the mountain air remains thin and crisp, even during the height of summer, there lived a young woman named Elara. She was a weaver of local repute, known for the intricate complexity of her designs and the stubborn density of her work. Every morning, long before the first light touched the jagged granite peaks, she sat at her heavy wooden loom, It was positioned near the open casement of her hut, facing the vast, shifting panorama of the valley floor. She had set herself a singular, daunting task. She was determined to weave a tapestry that captured the exact likeness of a fleeting summer sunset, that precise, agonizing moment when the orange light bleeds into a deep, bruised violet before vanishing entirely. Ilara kept a silver shuttle that was worn smooth by years of frantic, repetitive motion. It was her constant companion, a heavy, cool object that felt more like a part of her own hand than a tool. She believed that if she could only move the shuttle fast enough, if she could only coordinate her hands with the exact rhythm of the fading light, she would press her lips together, her jaw aching with the effort of concentration, and pull the threads through the warp with such ferocity that the loom groaned under the strain. If she missed a transition in the sky, or if her hand faltered for a second, she would rip out the last hour of work. She felt a cold, sharp bitterness whenever the light changed faster than her fingers could follow. One afternoon, the sky began to turn that particular, impossible shade of gold. Ilara leaned into her task, her breath shallow and uneven. She reached for the deep crimson thread, then the copper, then the charcoal, her shuttle darting back and forth like a trapped bird. She was so focused on the image, in her mind, on the perfection she had not yet reached, that she did not hear the footsteps on the dry grass outside her hut. A shadow fell across the loom, blocking the light. Ilara pulled her hand back, startled, the shuttle clattering against the frame. Standing in the doorway was an old weaver from a village further up the pass. She was known simply as the Cloud Watcher. Her eyes were clouded with age, yet they seemed to hold a kind of depth that made Ilara feel small and exposed. The old woman did not speak at first. She walked into the dim space of the hut and stood beside the loom, her fingers tracing the edge of the fabric. Ilara felt a surge of defensiveness. She wanted to tell the visitor that the work was not ready, that it was unfinished, and that it would have been much better if she had not been interrupted. The older woman looked at the tapestry, then at Ilara, and finally at the silver shuttle. Resting on the wood, she picked it up, feeling its weight, and then she looked toward the window. The sunset was already deepening into that bruised violet. The light was dissolving. It was gone. The Cloud Watcher turned to Ilara and asked, in a voice as soft as dry leaves on a stone path, why she was trying to trap the wind. Ilara blinked, her pulse still racing from the tension of the work. She explained that if she did not capture the sunset, the day would have passed for nothing. She said that she was trying to finish it, to make it stay, so that she could finally rest without the feeling that she had failed to preserve the beauty she saw. The old woman smiled, a slow and patient movement of her face, and set the silver shuttle down on the floor. She did not return it to Ilara's hand. Instead, she took a single, thin strand of unspun wool and held it up against the fading sky. She asked Ilara if the sky was finished. Ilara looked at the horizon, where the mountains were already turning to silhouettes against the gathering dark. She shook her head. The sky was always changing, always moving from one state to another, never holding on to a single color for more than a heartbeat. The teacher turned back to the loom. She pointed to a knot, where Ilara had pulled the thread so tight that the fabric was puckered and warped. She asked if the knot was the sunset, or if the knot was the worry about the sunset. Ilara looked at the floor. She had been staring at it for weeks, trying to hide it, trying to fix it, trying to convince herself that if she could just smooth it over, she would be a better weaver. She realized with a sudden, sinking clarity that her work was not about the light at all. It was about the pressure she placed upon her own hands to prove that she was enough. The cloud watcher sat down on the bench beside the loom. She did not offer to teach Elara a new pattern. She did not offer a way to finish the tapestry faster. She simply sat, her own hands resting open on her knees, and began to listen to the sounds of the valley. The crickets were starting their evening song, a rhythmic, steady pulse that had nothing to do with the sun or the sky. Elara found her own hands trembling. She looked at the unfinished work, the thousands of stitches that were not a sunset, but were simply stitches. She realized that she had been holding the shuttle as if it were a weapon, defending herself against the passage of time. For the first time in many seasons, Elara did not reach for the thread. She did not look at the clock, or the light, or the flaws in the weave. She looked at the woman sitting beside her. The teacher was breathing with a slow, deep ease, as if she were made of the same steady stuff as the mountain itself. She asked Elara to notice how the air felt in the room. Now that the work had stopped, it was not empty. It was full of the cooling evening, the scent of pine, and the quiet presence of two people sitting in the dark. Elara felt the tightness in her chest begin to unlock. It was a slow, physical release, like a heavy wooden bolt being pulled back from a door. She understood then that the sunset did not need to be caught. It was a gift that was given, and then it was gone. And that was the beauty of it. The beauty was not in the tapestry. The beauty was in the seeing. By trying to own the light, she had blinded herself to the life that was passing through her, around her, and in her. The old weaver stood up and walked toward the door, leaving the silver shuttle where she had placed it on the floor. She did not look back. She only paused for a moment to say that the loom is not a cage, and the thread is not a leash. She said that when the heart is tired, it is usually because it is trying to carry the sunset, the mountain, and the entire day inside its own small, fragile chamber. When she had gone, Elara remained on the bench. She did not pick up the shuttle. She did not try to fix the knot. She just sat there, listening to the night air move through the open window, letting the dark settle over her like a soft, familiar blanket. She noticed, as the stars began to appear over the mountain peaks, that she was not waiting for anything. She was not preparing for the next morning. She was not worrying about the tapestry she had failed to finish. She was simply present in the quiet of the room. The loom stood silent in the corner, a skeleton of wood and tension, but it no longer felt like a demand. It felt like an old friend who had finally been given permission to rest. Elara realized that the peace she had been seeking was not in the completion of her work, but in the decision to finally let the thread lie still. She breathed out, a long and steady exhale that reached into the very corners of the room, and for the first time in her life, she felt that she was enough, just as she was, without needing to produce a single thing to justify her existence. This story is not asking you to stop weaving the tapestry of your life. It is not suggesting that you should suddenly lose interest in your goals or that your passions are unworthy of your attention. That would be a misunderstanding of the path. We are not here to become hollow or indifferent. We are here to look at why the act of creation, which should be an expression of our deepest self, so often becomes a source of our greatest suffering. When Elara gripped that silver shuttle, she was not just working, she was fighting. She was trying to force the sunset to remain within the boundaries of her cloth. And when it inevitably faded, she felt that failure, as if it were a defect in her own soul. This is the hidden source of so much of our heaviness. We tend to believe that if we can just craft the perfect pattern, if we can just ensure every thread is pulled taut and every corner is square, we will finally be safe from the uncertainty of the world. We build these complex expectations, these rigid mental designs of how our days should go and how we should be received by others. And we treat these thoughts as if they are the ground beneath our feet. When life does not match our design, when the thread frays or the colors shift in ways we did not intend, we do not just see it as a change. We see it as a personal collapse. You are doing this when you lie in bed and replay the conversations of the day, looking for the exact moment where you went wrong, trying to pull the thread out and reweave the interaction until it feels perfect. You are doing this when you fear the future, because you are trying to weave a picture of tomorrow that you can control. But the nature of the thread itself is to move. It is the nature of the sunset to fade. When we try to pin the light to the loom, we are not preserving the light. We are only exhausting the weaver. The Buddha pointed toward a way of existing that does not rely on this desperate grasping. He did not teach that life is meant to be painful. He taught that suffering is what happens when we insist that things remain fixed, when they are, by their very nature, flowing. You feel this as a specific kind of internal friction. It is the friction of wanting to be finished, of wanting to be polished, of wanting to be beyond the reach of change. You feel behind in life, not because you are failing, but because you are judging the speed of your own unfolding against a static image that exists only in your mind. Think of your anxiety as that tension in the warp. You have pulled it so tight that the wood is bending. You are so worried about the tapestry not being enough that you have forgotten that you are the one who is holding the shuttle. You are the one who chooses to pick it up or set it down. The insight here is that you are not the tapestry. You are the space where the weaving happens. You are the consciousness that notices the colors, the movement, and the change. And that awareness does not have to be frayed by the pattern. When you feel that familiar surge of panic that you are not enough, or that you are falling behind, you are witnessing the mind's attempt to fix a problem that does not exist. The mind is a brilliant tool for solving the problems of the physical world, but it is not equipped to solve the problem of existence. It cannot finish the tapestry because the thread of the present moment is always adding more. It cannot reach the end because there is no end. There is only the sequence of stitches, one after another, and the grace of being the one who gets to watch them appear. You have been adding a second wound to the first. The first wound is the difficulty of life. It is the loss, the change, the disappointment, the simple fact that things do not always go as we hope. That is a part of being human. But the second wound, the one that keeps you awake at night, is the judgment you heap upon yourself for those difficulties. It is the thought that says, if I were smarter, I would have avoided this. If I were stronger, I would not feel this pain. If I were better, I would be finished by now. This is the extra weight. This is the knot you have been pulling until your palms are raw. To let go is not to abandon your life. It is to release the idea that you must be in total control of the outcome in order to be at peace. You can continue to weave. You can continue to care for your work, your family, and your growth. But you can do it with open hands when the sunset of the day fades. You do not have to hold onto the memory of it so tightly that you miss the quiet arrival of the evening. You can look at the pattern you have made today with all its knots and all its stray ends, and you can see it for what it truly is. It is not a test of your worth. It is simply the record of your presence. You are safe enough to set the shuttle down. There is no external authority waiting to grade your tapestry. There is no master weaver in the sky checking to see if you have finished your work before the sun goes down. Your life is an unfolding, and the beauty of it is that it is never finished. It is always becoming. When you start to feel that tightening, that bracing against the flow of the night, recognize it as the old habit of the weaver. Notice that you are holding the thread. Notice that you are pulling. And then see if you can just loosen your fingers, just a little bit, and let the thread rest on the loom. The peace you want is not a destination. It is not the final state of a perfectly completed cloth. It is the simple, honest recognition that you are allowed to be in the middle of your life. You are allowed to be a work. You are allowed to be a place where the threads meet and cross and sometimes tangle without having to represent a perfect image. The stillness you are looking for is already here, resting in the gaps between your thoughts, waiting for you to stop your frantic motion so it can finally be felt. It is like the silence in the room after the sound of a bell has ceased. You are not waiting for the sound to come back. You are not trying to force the bell to ring again. You are simply resting in the resonance. Your heart has been ringing with worry all day. It has been vibrating with the effort to hold everything together. Now, let the sound fade. Let the vibration settle into the wood. You do not need to do anything to make this happen. You only need to stop the hand that is striking the bell, take a breath, and feel how the air flows through you without any effort of your own. Your body knows how to breathe. Your life knows how to unfold. You do not need to guide it. You do not need to manage it. You are safe enough to let the loom fall quiet, to let the threads go loose, and to drift into the space that remains when the weaver finally decides to sit down and watch the light change. The night is deep, and it is kind, and it does not require anything from you, not even the completion of a single thought. You have done enough by simply being present. You have done enough by simply staying with the process. Let the day settle. Let the threads lie still, and notice how much easier it is to be when you are not trying to pin the world into place. Now, let us bring this insight into the quiet chamber of your own body. You are not required to change or to heal or to become something other than who you are in this moment. You are simply invited to practice a new way of holding the thread, if it feels right. Allow your body to grow heavy against the surface beneath you. Feel the support of the mattress, the way it accepts your weight without asking you to hold yourself up. You have been pulling at the loom of your life with such intensity that you have forgotten how to simply let the fabric rest against the frame. Begin by bringing your awareness to the rhythm of your breathing. Do not try to control it, or deepen it, or make it rhythmic. Just notice it. It is the movement of the air as it enters, and the movement as it leaves, a gentle shuttle sliding back and forth through the open space of your chest. If you notice your mind beginning to reach for thoughts, or if you feel that familiar itch to start planning your tomorrow, gently acknowledge the impulse. You do not need to fight it. You do not need to push it away. See if you can simply label it as a part of the weaving. Perhaps you might imagine your mind as that loom in the hut, with the threads of your concerns stretching out in front of you. Some of these threads are bright and golden, the hopes and joys you are currently weaving. Others are dark and tangled, the worries about being behind, the knots of self-judgment, the jagged edges of what you wish were different. In the past, when you saw these tangled threads, you reached out to grab them. You pulled at them, trying to smooth them, trying to force them into a perfect pattern. Tonight, try something different. When you notice a thought that feels like a knot, do not reach for it with your hands. Just bring your awareness to the knot itself. Look at it, not with judgment, but with the curiosity of someone who has just noticed a stray texture in the weave. Is it a real knot? Or is it just the appearance of a knot? Is it something that must be fixed? Or is it just a part of the way the thread has moved today? You do not have to do anything to it. You do not have to correct it. You only need to notice that it is there, and then bring your attention back to the breath. If the thought keeps pulling, if it keeps saying that you have to solve this right now, simply smile at the thought. You can say to yourself, "Oh, there is that part of me that is afraid of the unfinished. There is that part of me that thinks I must be complete." You can acknowledge the feeling without needing to obey it. You can let the thread remain exactly as it is, tangled and loose, and see what happens when you decide not to touch it. You might feel a strange sense of vulnerability, as if letting go of the thread means the whole tapestry will unravel. This is normal. You have spent a long time believing that your tight grip was the only thing holding your world together. But look at how the breath continues to move, regardless of your worry. Look at how the night continues to turn, the stars continuing their slow dance, without you needing to do a single thing to help them. You are allowed to take your hands off the shuttle. You are allowed to let the loom sit silent while you rest. If you find your muscles tightening, if your shoulders begin to pull upward, or your jaw starts to clench, just notice the sensation. You do not need to force a release. You can just become aware of the tension and imagine that you are loosening the tension on the warp, just a tiny bit. Let the threads breathe. Let the fabric settle. It is okay if the pattern is messy. It is okay if there are gaps where you expected solid color. Life is not a finished work. It is an act of creation, and you are the space in which that creation unfolds. When you notice your mind jumping into the future, rehearsing a conversation, or worrying about a task for tomorrow, bring your focus back to the present sensation of your skin against the fabric of your bed. Feel the texture of the pillow, the warmth of the air, the weight of your limbs. These are the grounding threads of your life. They are the reality that exists, regardless of what the mind is thinking. You are not your thoughts. You are not the weaver who is worried about the tapestry. You are the stillness that is watching the weaver work. What would it feel like to end your day? Not by finishing the tasks, but by simply acknowledging that the day is done. We often treat sleep as another task, something we must achieve in order to be ready for tomorrow. But sleep is not a project. It is a surrender. It is the moment when you finally stop trying to control the design and you let the loom go dark. You can offer yourself this grace. You do not have to be a perfect weaver tonight. You do not have to be a finished product. You are allowed to be a work in progress, a collection of beautiful, messy, unfinished threads that are perfectly fine just as they are. As you breathe, notice how the air feels cool as it enters and warm as it leaves. This is the only thread you need to worry about right now. One breath in, one breath out. Everything else can wait. The tapestry will be there tomorrow, and you will be there to weave it if you choose. But for now, the shuttle is resting on the floor, the loom is quiet, and the weaver of the sunset has no more work to do. If you find yourself drifting away, do not try to pull yourself back. That drifting is the beginning of the rest you are looking for. It is the natural movement of the mind, moving from the sharp focus of the weaver into the expansive, soft awareness of the night. You are doing well. You are exactly where you need to be, even if it feels like you are nowhere at all. There is a profound comfort in realizing that you do not have to know the final outcome of your life in order to be at peace. You only need to know how to be with this current moment, to see it without needing to change it, and to feel it without needing to master it. Your heart is capable of this. Your heart already knows how to soften, even if your mind is still holding on to the old patterns. You are the space where the tapestry of your life is being woven, and that space is far larger, far more patient, and far more compassionate than the thoughts that are currently circulating. Stay with the breath. Let the image of the loom soften in your mind until it is just a distant, quiet presence. Let the silver shuttle rest. There is nothing to fix here. There is no pattern to perfect. There is only the gentle, rhythmic rising and falling of your own life, moving in harmony with the turning of the night. You are safe. You are held. And you are allowed to simply let the day come to an end without needing to solve a single thing. Years later, in a secluded scriptorium carved deep into the mountainside, a monk named Kalen labored over a grand project. He was tasked with transcribing an ancient text, a scroll of such immense length that it wrapped around the walls of his cell 3 times. Kalen was a man of extreme precision. His brushes were made of the finest camel hair. His ink was ground from mountain soot and aged for a decade. And he believed that if he could transcribe the entire scroll without a single tremor of his hand, he would finally earn the silence he had craved since he first entered the monastery. He felt that his mind was too loud, too erratic, and too prone to drifting. He hoped that by committing these sacred words to paper, he could somehow train his soul to be as fixed and unmoving as the ink on the page. But the text was treacherous. It spoke of the nature of the wind, the way things arrive and depart without an owner, and the fundamental emptiness of all grasping. Kalen found that the harder he tried to copy these words, with perfect, unswerving focus, the more his mind rebelled. He would make a tiny smudge, a slight hesitation in a character, or a drip of ink that pooled where it did not belong. Every mistake felt like a catastrophe. He would spend hours scraping the parchment with a dull blade, trying to erase his own history, trying to make the paper appear as if it had never been touched by his hand. He was exhausted. His fingers were stained with dark ink that would not wash away, and his eyes were hollow from the flickering lamplight. One rainy evening, as the mountain mists swirled around the eaves of the scriptorium, a wandering painter appeared at his door. The painter was a man of few belongings, carrying only a roll of blank rice paper and a few worn brushes. He was not a monk, and he did not seem concerned with the sacred texts. He asked for shelter from the storm, and Kalen, though he was busy with his pen, gestured for him to sit in the corner. The painter did not speak. He simply opened his roll of paper, dipped a brush into a bowl of water, and began to paint. He was not using ink. He was painting with water directly onto the dry stone floor of the cell. Kalen watched from the corner of his eye. The water made dark, vivid strokes that caught the lamplight, creating trees, rivers, and mountains that seemed to breathe. But as soon as the painter moved his hand, the water began to evaporate. The image faded. The stone returned to its dry, dull state. Kalen found this infuriating. He asked the painter why he would bother to create something so beautiful if it was going to vanish. In moments, He told the painter that he was wasting his time, that he was leaving nothing behind to show for his effort. The painter looked up, his expression calm and unburdened. He pointed to Kalen's long, tangled scroll and asked why the monk felt the need to make everything permanent. He picked up his brush and invited Kalen to stop his work for a moment. He handed the monk a dry reed pen, a simple, lightweight tool that lacked the heavy weight of Kalen's expensive brushes. He asked Kalen to dip the reed into the water and draw a single, crooked line on the stone floor. Kalen hesitated. He was used to the high stakes of his ink, where every movement was a permanent record of his failure or success. But the painter's presence was so quiet, so devoid of judgment, that Kalen finally touched the reed to the stone. The line was indeed crooked. It was uneven and imperfect. Kalen looked at it and felt the old impulse to apologize, to explain his lack of skill, to reach for his blade, to scratch it away. But the painter simply laughed, a sound that held no mockery, only a genuine delight. He told that the line was not meant to be a record of his life. It was meant to be a record of the moment he was alive. He explained that the monk's suffering did not come from his errors. It came from the belief that he had to be the author of a perfect legacy rather than a participant in a flowing event. The painter then took a second brush and added to Kalen's line, turning it into the branch of a mountain pine. He did not care that the first line was crooked. He used it. He moved with it. Kalen felt a shiver run through his spine. He realized that for all his years in the monastery, he had been trying to paint a stone that would last forever, while the world was made of water and wind. He looked at his scroll. He looked at the ink-stained floor. He saw that he had been fighting against the very nature of his existence, trying to solidify a process that was meant to be fluid. Kalen did not stop his transcription work that night, but something fundamental had shifted. When he returned to his desk, he did not reach for his heavy, expensive brush. He picked up the simple reed. He began to write again. When he made a smudge, he did not scrape the parchment. He simply let the smudge be there. He realized that the smudge was not a failure of his character. It was just a mark on the page, like a cloud in the sky or a ripple in a stream. He wrote the next character with a different quality of attention. It was no longer a frantic effort to prove his worth. It was an act of witnessing the moment. He began to breathe before he touched the pen to the scroll. He would pause, feel the rhythm of the mountain air, and acknowledge that he was not trying to save the world with his calligraphy. He was just practicing the art of being present. If his mind drifted toward the future, he did not punish himself. He simply noticed the drift, took a breath, and returned to the stroke. He was not trying to be a perfect monk. He was just a human being, making marks on paper while the world moved through its own natural patterns around him. The painter stayed through the duration of the storm. They did not talk much. They lived in a shared quiet rhythm. When the sun finally broke through the clouds and the scriptorium was filled with light, the painter packed his few things. He left the dry reed pen on Kalen's desk. Kalen did not ask him to stay. He did not ask for a final instruction. He understood that the teaching had already been given. He watched the painter walk down the mountain path, his footsteps light and unhurried. Kalen turned back to his scroll. The ink was still drying, the words were still there, but the heavy, stifling feeling of being unfinished had been replaced by a light, cool sensation of simply being exactly where he was. He knew that the scroll would never be truly complete, because Even if he finished the last character, the words would still be changing in the mind of whoever read them, and the world would still be shifting beneath his feet. And that was all right. He no longer needed to be the one who finished everything. He was content to be the one who contributed his small, honest part to the whole. He sat in the silence of the high valley, the reed pen resting in his hand, and he noticed that, for the first time in his life, he was not looking for a way out of his own mind. He was looking at the way. The light fell across the desk, and he found that he had finally arrived at the place he had been traveling toward for so long. It was not a mountain peak. It was not an ancient text. It was the simple, ordinary grace of letting the water be water, and letting the ink be ink, and allowing the weaver of his own life to rest. You have been carrying a heavy belief that your worth is tied to how tightly you can hold the shuttle of your own life. It is as if you think that if you ever stop, if you ever let the thread go slack, the entire tapestry will unravel into a pile of useless, knotted wool. But look closely at the mechanics of this fear. When life presents you with a difficulty, a sudden change, a loss, or a frustration, that is the first movement of the thread. It is a natural event. It is a ripple in the fabric. It is not, in itself, a catastrophe. It is simply the nature of existence to shift. The suffering you experience is not caused by the shift itself. It is caused by the desperate, frantic effort to pull the thread back to where it was before. You are trying to weave a past that is already gone, or a future that has not yet been formed. And this effort creates a friction that burns the palms of your spirit. When the thread snags, you do not just see a snag. You see a failure. You see a sign that you are behind, or that you are incompetent, or that you are not enough. You add a heavy, dark layer of judgment over the original event, and that layer is the true weight you feel in your chest. Think of it as trying to write on the surface of a moving river. Life is the water, and your mind is the pen. You are obsessed with making the mark permanent. You believe that if you can just press hard enough, if you can just solidify the ink, you will finally have a record of a perfect, finished life that can be held up and admired. But the river never stops. The water is always moving, and your ink will always dissolve. When you see your mark vanishing, you panic. You press harder. You scratch at the river. You grow angry at the water for being liquid. This is the cycle of resistance. It is the movement of the mind, trying to turn a process into a possession. You think that if you could just control every variable, if you could just anticipate every knot, you would finally be safe from the pain of change. But the desire for control is the ultimate exhaustion. It is like trying to catch the wind in a sieve. No matter how fast you move, or how precise you think your hand is, the wind will always pass through. The reality of your life is that it is a flow, not a finished monument. When you judge yourself for your anxiety, you are effectively trying to punish the weaver for the texture of the tapestry. You look at your fear and you call it a weakness, instead of seeing it as a natural reaction to the vastness of the unknown. You look at your loneliness and you call it a failure, instead of seeing it as a space that is inviting you to return to your own center. You turn your pain into an identity. You stop being a person who is currently feeling pain, and you become the pain itself. You build a home out of your mistakes, and you decide to live inside them. The Buddhist insight here is profoundly liberating. It suggests that you can be entirely present with the difficulty of your life without needing to become the difficulty. You can witness the shifting patterns, the snags, the fraying edges, and the tangled knots without having to take them personally. You are the observer of the loom. You are the awareness that notices the thread is caught. You do not have to be the one who is caught. Consider how the mind rehearses the future, playing out scenarios where you finally succeed or where you finally fail. It does this because it believes that if it can imagine every possible outcome, it will be prepared. It thinks that rehearsal is safety, but all it is doing is pulling the thread of tomorrow into the loom of today, creating a double burden. You are currently feeling the weight of the present and the weight of your own imagination. No wonder. You feel like you are perpetually behind. You are trying to live 10 different lives at once, each of them unfinished, each of them requiring your constant, anxious attention. The practice of letting go is not about apathy. It is about honesty. It is the courage to say, this is what is happening right now, and I do not have to fight it to be okay. It is the willingness to let the thread lie where it falls, without reaching out to pull it taut. It is the understanding that your value is not a project to be completed. You are not a draft that needs endless editing. You are the canvas itself, and the canvas is always whole, regardless of the marks that are made upon it. When you feel that familiar itch to fix yourself, to smooth out your edges, to polish your character until you shine like a new coin, stop and feel the physical sensation of that impulse. Notice where it lives in your body. Is it a tightening in the throat? Is it a cold knot in the belly? Is it a racing pulse? That sensation is the physical manifestation of the second wound. It is the body reacting to the mind's demand for a finished result. Do not try to get rid of that sensation. Do not tell yourself you are wrong for feeling it. Simply recognize it as the weaver's habit. It is the hand reaching for the shuttle out of fear. It is the impulse to grab, to hold, to make solid. Just observe it. You might even name it. You might say, this is the fear of being unfinished. This is the desire for a perfect pattern. Just naming it creates a small space between you and the impulse. That space is where the peace begins to grow. You are not failing because you are struggling. You are struggling because you are human. And it is a difficult thing to be human in a world that is always changing. Your suffering is not a sign of your inadequacy. It is a sign of your sensitivity. It is a sign that you are deeply engaged with the unfolding of your own life. And that is a beautiful thing. But you have been engaging with a clenched fist. Tonight, you are learning how to open it. You can act in your life with purpose and care. Without needing to demand that the outcome be fixed, you can make plans for tomorrow without needing to own tomorrow. You can strive for your goals without needing to anchor your self-worth to them. This is the path of the steady weaver. They work because they love the work, not because they are terrified of the end. They see the pattern, they acknowledge the flaws, and they continue to move with the rhythm of the day, knowing that the tapestry will be exactly as it needs to be, whether it is finished or not. You have spent so long trying to be the architect of your own experience that you have forgotten how to be the guest of your own life. You are the one who is invited to experience the colors, the light, the movement, and the texture of your own existence. You do not need to build it. You only need to witness it. When you stop trying to fix the world, you find that the world is much more capable of taking care of itself than you ever gave it credit for. And you find that you, too, are much more capable of resting than you ever dared to imagine. You are safe in this realization. Nothing will fall apart if you stop pulling the thread. The world will keep turning. The stars will keep their distance. And you will still be exactly who you are. Only now, you will be a person who is breathing. Instead of bracing, you are learning to move with the current of your life rather than trying to swim upstream against it. And this is the beginning of a true and lasting freedom. It is the moment when you finally realize that the loom can be set aside and the weaver can finally sit down. This wisdom is not reserved for mountain hermitages or silent temple courtyards. It is meant for the kitchen table, the quiet commute, the glow of your phone screen in the dark, and the crowded intersections of your own busy days. You can practice this as you wait for a text message that feels like a judgment on your worth. When you find your pulse quickening because the screen remains black, pause for just one moment. Notice the desire to reach out and fill the space with a follow-up, a question, a plea for reassurance. That impulse is the weaver reaching for the shuttle, trying to force the thread to move faster. You do not have to obey it. You can let the space exist. You can let the uncertainty remain, knowing that your value as a human being is not recorded in the silence of another person. The same is true for those long hours when you lie awake, replaying a mistake from the afternoon or anticipating a conflict next week. You are sitting at the loom, but you are not weaving fabric. You are weaving a prison. When you see your mind beginning to pull those dark threads of memory or dread, you do not have to help it. You can simply notice that the weaving has started again. You can say to yourself, "I see you, little weaver, but there is no need to finish this project tonight. The pattern can wait." The errors of the past are already woven into the cloth, and no amount of anxious reliving will undo them. The future is a set of threads that have not yet reached your hands. Why are you trying to knot them before they arrive? Perhaps you feel behind in your life, looking at the tapestries of others and seeing them as more complete, more vibrant, more successful. This is the oldest trap. You are comparing your messy, unfolding process to their finished, curated images. You are looking at their cloth from a distance, where you cannot see the knots, the frayed ends, or the places where the thread ran out and had to be spliced. Everyone is working with the same raw material of time. Everyone is navigating the same uncertainty. You are not behind. You are simply in the middle of your own work, and the middle is exactly where you are supposed to be. And when you find yourself smiling while you feel heavy inside, or pretending that you are not tired because you are afraid of being seen as weak, you are adding yet another layer of tension to the warp. You are trying to weave a picture of strength to cover the reality of your weariness, but the thread does not care about the image. The thread only responds to the tension of your hands. If you are tired, let yourself be tired. There is a deep, honest dignity in admitting that you have reached the end of your capacity for a given day. You do not have to justify your rest. You do not have to earn the right to put the shuttle down. Caring for the people in your life does not require you to grip the relationship like a lifeline. When you try to control the outcome of a conversation or ensure that a loved one thinks of you in a specific way, you are acting as if you are the sole designer of the connection. But relationships are co-creations. They are not tapestries that you weave alone. They are living, breathing interactions that require space to expand and contract. When you stop pulling so hard on your end of the thread, you give the other person room to move too. You give the relationship the oxygen it needs to breathe. You may find it difficult to stop the habit of checking your devices for the reassurance that you are doing okay. The world offers 1,000 ways to measure our progress, to count our likes, to track our status, and to quantify our worth. But these are digital ghosts. They have no weight. They have no color. They are not the fabric of your life. When you reach for your phone in the middle of the night, ask yourself what you are looking for. Are you looking for peace? Or are you looking for a way to quiet the inner voice that tells you you are unfinished? Peace cannot be delivered by a notification. It can only be found in the quiet, empty space where you stop looking for external approval and start feeling the simple, steady rhythm of your own heart. This practice is not about becoming a person who never worries. It is about becoming a person who knows how to put the worry down. It is not about never making a mistake. It is about learning to look at a knot in your tapestry and deciding that it is just a knot, not a definition of your soul. You can lead a life of discipline and purpose. You can set goals and work toward them, but you can do it with an open palm. You can be the gardener who tends the hedge, not because you are afraid the garden will fail, but because you love the act of pruning, the smell of the leaves, and the quiet beauty of the growth. When you notice that you are feeling guilty for resting, see if you can trace that guilt back to the belief that you must be in constant production to be valid. That belief is a thread that was woven into you by a world that values the object over the maker. But you are the maker. You are the source of the beauty. If you do not rest, the maker becomes exhausted and the work loses its joy. By setting aside your tasks, you are not failing. You are preserving the health of the weaver. You have the power to stop the narrative that says you must be fixed, finished, or perfected before you are allowed to be happy. That narrative is a heavy, dark thread that you can simply choose not to weave into your tapestry anymore. You can decide that your life is beautiful right now in its present state of being. You can decide that the imperfections are not flaws, but are the unique textures that make your experience entirely your own. You do not need to be a masterpiece to be precious. You only need to be present. As you move through your days, let your breath be your guide. When you feel the tension rising, when you feel the need to control, to compare, or to perfect, pause for just one breath. In that moment of pause, you are not a weaver. You are the silence itself. You are the space that holds the entire process. And in that space, there is no need for anything to be different than it is. You are exactly as you should be in this very moment of becoming. The day will eventually close, the sun will set, and you will have the chance to lay your tools down. You do not need to solve the pattern tonight. You do not need to understand the entire design before you close your eyes. You have woven enough for today. The rest can wait until the morning light. The loom is silent now. The silver shuttle rests upon the floor. Its long work finally surrendered to the gathering dark. You have spent so many hours, so many seasons, holding the tension of the thread, believing that if you were to loosen your grip, the entire design would vanish into the air. But look at the room around you. The world has not unraveled. The night remains held in place by forces much older and much steadier than your own effort. The tapestry of your life will continue to unfold in its own time, with or without your anxious watch. You are not the weaver who must force the pattern to be perfect. You are the space where the cloth is made, and that space is wide, and it is deep, and it is capable of holding everything you are. Feel the weight of your limbs now, sinking into the soft support of your bed. The thread of your day is no longer pulling at your heart. You can let the tension go. You can let the weave be what it is, with its gaps, its knots, and its vibrant, shifting colors. There is nothing more for you to do tonight. You do not have to plan the colors for tomorrow. You do not have to check the symmetry of what you did today. You are permitted to let the loom sit in the shadow, to let the dust motes dance in the moonlight, and to simply be the consciousness that observes the stillness. As you breathe, imagine the thread of your own life gently slackening. Each exhale is a release of the tension you have carried. The fabric of your mind is softening, the edges blurring into the quiet dark. You are not a project that needs completion. You are not a puzzle that must be solved. You are a living, breathing expression of the present moment, and that is more than enough. When you wake, tomorrow the light will return, and the shuttle will still be there, waiting for your hand. But you will approach it differently. You will know that the peace you sought was not found in the final, framed result. It was found in the willingness to set the work down and acknowledge that the weaver was never separate from the stillness. Allow the breath to become shallow and rhythmic, like the faint, slow pulse of a tide moving across a dark shore. You are drifting toward the edge of the loom room, toward the vast, untroubled garden of sleep. Every thought that arises is just a stray fiber, floating for a moment in the air before it settles and disappears. Do not try to catch it. Do not try to smooth it. Let it fall where it may. You are not the fibers. You are the empty, peaceful room, where the light of your awareness rests. The mountain air are outside. Your window is cooling the stone. The valley is quiet. The birds have tucked their heads beneath their wings, and the river is moving through the dark, unconcerned with whether its path is straight or winding. You can be like the river. You can be like the mountain. You can be like the stillness that waits behind the noise of your own thoughts. There is a deep and ancient wisdom in simply stopping. There is a profound grace in realizing that your effort was only ever a way to hide from the simplicity of your own existence. You have walked a long way to find this place of rest. You have carried the weight of the design for years, believing that it was your duty to make it stay, to make it shine, to make it final. But tonight, you can finally put the burden down. You can let the thread lie still. The tapestry will wait. The future will arrive in its own time, and you will meet it with the same quiet heart that is breathing here, in this dark, in this bed, in this moment of total release. You are not leaving anything behind. You are only letting go of the need to be the one who finishes the world. Everything you are, everything you have done, and everything you are becoming is already woven into the fabric of the universe. It is safe, it is held, and it is perfect in its incompleteness. Let your eyelids grow heavy now. Let your mind dissolve into the soft, velvet texture of the night. You are not falling into emptiness. You are falling into the space that has always been the source of your light. What would it feel like to wake tomorrow as someone who has already stopped trying to frame the sunset and has begun instead to live in the glowing, golden spaces between the threads?